Hello everyone and welcome back to Aunt Susie's Kitchen. Today we are going to make this wonderful dessert. In Polish they're known as pączki, but here in the US we call them jelly donuts. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go over these ingredients. I have my stand mixer on the ready. I have 5 cups of all-purpose flour. I have some regular table salt. I have a half a cup of white granulated sugar. I have 1.5 cups of milk that I've heated, and you really want it no more than 110 degrees. So I'm gonna let this cool down a couple more degrees and then we'll be ready to go. I have 4 ounces of room temperature butter. I have 2 packages of dry yeast, and if you have the yeast in the larger container, you could measure out a ½ ounce, and that's exactly the same amount. I have some vanilla, and I also have some eggs, and let me just show you this little trick because the recipe calls for room temperature eggs, and I did not take them out in advance. So I just ran some hot tap water, and I rested the eggs in the tap water for about 10 minutes now. We're gonna go ahead and get everything into the stand mixer, and I wanna go ahead and start with the milk, and I'm just gonna pour the milk in there. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add the yeast. And I'm going to combine this for a couple of seconds just so that the yeast doesn't float on the top. Perfect. Now I'm just going to add the butter. And like I said, it's room temperature butter, so once I get the sugar in there and I turn the mixer back on, it will take no time for it to blend and dissolve nicely. Okay, so that mixed for about 3 minutes, and while that was mixing, I went ahead and got my eggs ready. So this recipe calls for 1 whole egg plus 3 additional egg yolks. So I just broke them all into the same glass jug that I was using for the milk, and I'm going to go ahead and add them one at a time. Okay, now I'm going to get the flour and the salt, and I'm going to add that to that mixture, and I'm going to beat it until it's nice and smooth. Okay, so with the mixer on, I'm going to go ahead and start adding the flour a little bit at a time just so that it incorporates. Okay, that's good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab, I have a plastic bench scraper, and that's really good because it'll allow me to go ahead and get all of this batter down off of the bowl, and I will pour it out onto the counter with a little bit of flour on the surface, and I'll roll it into a nice cohesive ball, and we'll go ahead and get it ready for its first proof. So there's my dough. I poured it out onto the counter that was floured, and I kneaded a little bit and just put it into a nice mound. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you now how I'm going to allow it to rise. I got a really cool trick for you. Okay, so here's my little trick, and it's so very useful for whenever you're making dough that you're gonna roll out to be a rectangle. So I have very simply a plastic container, and I make sure I use a pretty deep one because this dough is going to rise and you don't want it to bounce off the top or knock the lid off. And so what I did was I took the dough and I basically just formed it by turning it underneath itself until it became a little more elongated and a little more narrow. And now what's going to happen is as it rises, it's going to fill this container and take on the shape of this rectangle container. And so then I can just pour it out when I'm ready to use it. and roll it out and not have to fight with dough that has risen into a circle and try to force that circle to be a rectangle. So the last thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use a little nonstick spray and just give it a quick spray up on the surface so that it doesn't form a skin. I'm going to grab the lid, put the lid on it, and believe it or not, I'm going to let this dough rise overnight in the refrigerator. And then I'm going to grab it and I'm going to show you what's next. Okay, so it's been 24 hours. Our dough has been in the refrigerator. Just open it up and give you an idea of what it looks like. See how nicely it's risen? And it's taken on the shape of the container. So what I'm going to do right now is punch it down and put it back in the refrigerator and let it have one more rise before we go ahead and roll it out. So that's it. That's simple. I punched it down. I'm going to put it back in the refrigerator, and then tomorrow I'm going to take it out, let it come up to room temperature, roll it out, cut my donuts out, and fry them. And we'll be back. Good morning, guys. Okay, we are back. It's been about 12 hours since I put this back in the refrigerator. And I want to go ahead and just take the lid off and show you how nice it's risen again. And again, remember, in the refrigerator, it doesn't rise as quickly or as rapidly, and it doesn't allow the yeast to overgrow. So this is perfect for what I want. I have just a regular rolling pin that I'm going to use, and I also have a little bit of bench flour here. And then, of course, I'm going to need a cookie cutter. I've grabbed 2 baking sheets, and I've lined them with some parchment, because once I roll these out and I cut the shapes that I want, I'm going to put them on the parchment lined pans, and I'm going to go ahead and let them proof one last time before we fry them. So let me show you what I'm going to use here. This is the cutter that I'm going to use. It's about 3 inches. It has 2 separate sides, and it comes in a set like this. So these are good for making free-form torts, or you could make hand pies with these. There's a lot of different things you can do. You can get these online. They're very inexpensive. I also have a set here of plastic ones. I find that the plastic ones hold their shape better, because you see these are about maybe 10 years old, and after a while washing them, they kind of, they can dent and dang and lose their shape. So the plastic ones hold their shape really well. I also have a set of square ones, and these are good for making cookies. I especially like to make Linzer tart cookies with these. So, okay, so that's that. Let me go ahead and get this area cleaned up, and I will show you how we're gonna roll these out and get them ready. Okay, so let's get started. Go ahead and just put down a little bit of bench flour. I'm gonna grab that dough. And when the dough is cold like this, look how easy it is to handle. Doesn't wanna, fall apart on me or anything like that, so that's good. And because I've oiled it, I'm not worried about it sticking to my rolling pin, but also because I let it rise in a container that was rectangular, you can see how easy it's going to be for me to roll it into the shape that I want. So I'm gonna roll this out, maybe about 1/2 inch thick. And then I'm gonna start cutting out my shapes. Let me go grab my pans really quick. Okay, so I just have a baking sheet or cookie sheet, and I have it parchment lined. And as I cut them, I'm going to put them in there. Okay, so like I said, this dough is really easy to work with now, and that's another reason why I like to refrigerate my dough. Okay, we are back, and I have my punchki here that have risen nicely, and I'm just checking my oil. So let me just talk real quick about this setup. First of all, I cannot stress enough safety when it comes to work with oil and deep frying. Make sure you are on a level surface, make sure you have good ventilation, and the most important part is make sure you do not overfill whatever you're heating your oil in with too much oil, because if you do, once you start adding your items, it's gonna boil up and over. So I have this filled about 1 inch, which is 2/3 of a way up the side of the the electric skillet that I'm using here. And you guys may recognize this from when my kitchen was being renovated. This was my favorite kitchen appliance. I used it regularly to cook while I had no stove or oven. So I know well how it works, how it heats, and I can rely on some good even cooking from it. So I'm gonna get this oil to about 350 degrees, and then I'm gonna start frying. I have here, I wanna do this on my stove over my hood, because when I start frying, I'm gonna actually turn my hood on so that my house doesn't smell like oil when I'm done. I have just a flat cookie sheet down so that I have a nice flat surface. I cannot stress that enough. You do not want to put yourself in a situation where your oil can tip or bubble over or be uneven at all. So that's very important. I have a pair of tongs. I'm also going to grab, I have this strainer here. And this works really well when you're frying things. Helps you get the item out, and also it has a nice big surface. I don't really want to grab them with my tongs, but I will turn them with my tongs, so I'm going to use the tongs. I have another sheet over here with just a wire rack on it, and that is what I'm going to put the paczki on when I take them out of the oil, and I'm going to let them cool just a little bit before I give them a bath in some sugar. So I have just a container here that has about an inch of sugar in it. So I'll put that off to the side, and our oil should be perfect now. So let's go ahead and get some of these in the oil. Now, we talk all the time about recovery time when you're using, you know, controlled temperatures. And as I drop these in here, because the temperature from the paczki obviously is not as hot as the oil is going to start to cool off. So a couple of things. I don't want to add too many too quickly, and I want to keep an eye on my temperature and make sure that it's always hot enough to keep movement around the donut, because if I see the movement slow down, then there's a good chance that they're getting oil filled, and you certainly don't want that. So I'll show you the first couple. Now this one's really rising nicely. Oh boy, a little too nicely actually. Separate them from each other, and I'm just going to make sure that they don't over brown, because I do not want them to get too brown. The color's starting to get very nice. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do them all. I'm going to bring them onto this wire rack as I'm finishing them up. Then I'm going to roll them in sugar while they're warm. Hey guys, okay, we are back, and all of our paczki are fried. They had been dredged in sugar while they were still warm, and they are looking beautiful. So all I have done here is fit a regular disposable pastry bag with this tip. This is a tip that is made especially for filling things. You can use this for cream puffs or eclairs, and obviously I'm going to use it for the donuts. And I have some raspberry jam in here. You can either buy your favorite or make your favorite, whatever you prefer. These are the bags that we use. They are disposable. They come 100 count, and what I like about them is they are on this perforated roll. You just rip them off as you need them. Okay, so here's all we're going to do. We're going to pick up one of the paczki. We're going to use this tip and the fact that it is a little sharp on the end, and we're going to go ahead and insert it. And I'm just going to kind of feel, I'll move it around on the inside, and I'll keep squeezing as I remove it, because I want it to be nice and filled on the inside. There's nothing worse than a naked jelly donut, right? Look at that. It almost wants to come back out the end. And that's exactly what you're looking for. You don't want them, you know, completely squishing out, but you want to have some weight to it now, and you definitely want to fill them until they're nice and full so that when you bite them, you get a bite of jelly in every piece. And here's just another little tip. When I am ready to refill my bag, I just find a cup that's kind of wide mouth and kind of deep. I'll fold over the tip and I'll lay it inside there. So now it's in a position where I can just take my filling and go ahead and put it inside the bag without needing two hands. Sometimes if my husband or my son are around, I'll make them hold the bag while I fill it. But I found that this actually works better because they tend to move around a lot, and this just kind of sits still for me. And then that's it. When you're ready, you just lift it up and you're ready to go. There you have it, guys. Another quick and easy recipe. We hope you go ahead and give it a try. And if you do, drop us a note. Let us know how they came out. Make sure you stop by social media and say hi. We're at Aunt Susie's Kitchen on Facebook, Aunt Susie's Kitchen on Instagram, and of course here on YouTube. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you hit the notify button, you'll get an email every time a new video is out so you never miss anything. Make sure you come back and see us again because there's always something good cooking in Aunt Susie's Kitchen.